What's up, gravel groupies, cycling junkies, bike lovers? We are back. We got some awesome content for you today. One of my favorite episodes, favorite conversations, left totally blown away and inspired. Can't wait to share that with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. But first, let's hit up the sponsors. So start with Legacy Bikes. That's Legacy with an I, Legaci bikes.com. At Legacy Bikes, they've got 30 plus years of experience with bikes and racing and junior racing and junior development, and now they're into kids' balance bikes. So you want to get your little one started, that's the place to go. Hit them up at legacybikes.com. I got one for my daughter for Christmas. She loves it. It's awesome. So hit Todd up over there at Legacy Bikes. We're also sponsored by NYSBRA, the New York State Bicycle Racing Association. Tons of good stuff there, a really important organization, and they just rolled out a fat bike page and are working on, or have worked on, accumulating all the fat bike races in New York State into a race calendar that I believe is up and available for you to check out on NYSBRA.com. So go over there, show them some love, check out the fat bike race calendar. It's a growing market. Lots of cool races going on in the state. It's going to be a good winter for it, and it's a good relevant form for this podcast for sure, for this episode. Also coming at you, the Dirty Bikes Gravel Series, Dirty with a U, D-U-R-T-Y, Bikes Gravel Series. You can see us on ridelcc.com or search Dirty Bikes on Bike Reg to register for all 3 races in the series. You can also register for each race individually by looking at Ocean Giant, Prattsburg Gravel, or Hills of High Tour. We have tons of awesome prizes, swag, pro racers coming in, big parties coming around it. Get signed up for your spring classic racing today by hitting up the Dirty Bikes Gravel Series. And if you register before February 2nd or February 1st, you will get a free pair of event socks at Ocean and a free pair of event socks at Prattsburg. But you got to get in before February in order to make sure you win those, or you get those free socks. If you're in the first 100, we also have of the whole series, we also have our yearly gift there. I will roll out what that is hopefully in the coming weeks. It's a really cool setup that we got, something different. But either way, you got to get in the first 100 to get it, and those spots are closing up pretty quickly. That's the first 100 for the whole series. So go over and hit those up and get registered. All right, so the show today is one of my favorites. Unbelievable. I left totally just floored from Growler Bikes and everything that they have going on there, particularly with the owner, Willo Wheels Glynn. This guy is dynamic. He is the Elon Musk of the bike industry. He is going to shake everything up, and he already is. He's got big ideas, big ambition, and he knows what he's talking about. Such a cool conversation. I can't say enough about how amazing it was. Todd and I walked out, and Todd's text to me was just simply, wow. That's all he sent. Wow. And I don't think you could say it any better than that. So check out the podcast. You're going to really enjoy this. Check out Growler Bikes. They're exciting, and they're right out of Rochester, New York. So enjoy the show.
You'll never go out on a training ride and dig that deep.
Awesome. We won gold.
They're life rides.
I'm like, dude, I'm still figuring this out.
Lose sight of the fact that it's whoever goes faster.
This isn't a road race. This isn't a mountain bike race.
The sensei of sprint, Todd Shesky.
My eyes are coming out of my head. Just get in here.
All right, we are here today at Growler Performance Bikes. Tony, how you doing this cold, well, actually not so cold, January?
Good, buddy, good. It was a good start to the year. I got out on my fat bike on the first day of January, just like always. Nice. So we got a nice ride up at Harriet. Good. And now we're here to check out some fat bikes, so I'm excited about that.
Absolutely. So we're actually here on site today with Willo Glynn, the originator of Rochester's probably only produced bike, right? Manufactured here in Rochester.
Yeah, manufactured here in Rochester. We are the only ones, but there are actually one other manufacturer, Kink. Kink Bikes is actually out of Rochester, but it's not manufactured here. This is their headquarters here.
Okay.
So yeah.
Very
awesome.
cool.
Well, it's great to be here. We did get a little bit of a tour of your facility here, and it's quite an impressive setup that you have here, and quite a lot of capacity. It's surprising.
Yeah, we actually started out last year with a or 2 years ago with a 2,000 square foot facility, and it was beyond cramped. So now we have this beautiful 19,000 square foot facility. We just moved in here about 6 months ago, and it's been phenomenal. We can now store everything for the bikes and have it all here in mass quantity, which allows us to produce a lot more bikes a lot faster.
Excellent. So let's start from the beginning, I guess. Maybe not when you were 4 years old on your bike. Maybe not that far beginning, but what are the origins of Growler Bike? How did you started riding? You saw what was your inspiration for getting this thing rolling and the progression.
So I mean, not to go back too far, but the reality and what the basis of our company is mountain biking to me has always been about having fun with my buddies, getting away from life, and just enjoying the idea of riding. And, the fun story that actually how I even got into mountain biking when I moved up here to New York, I had been mountain biking when I was a kid down in Florida. Obviously, we don't have any mountains. And I wanted to actually start commuting from my house in Brighton at the time to Greece where I was working. So I went out to a local bike shop and I bought a Trek 4300. And being a guy who just does everything beyond what I'm supposed to be doing, the very first day I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go try those clipless pedal thingies. So I threw them on my bike, and my wife had went to Syracuse. And she took off. Syracuse was, 96 miles away from here? I think it was the MapQuest. That's how old this was. I was using MapQuest. And it was a beautiful Saturday morning. I remember she took off that morning with the two kids. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to ride to Syracuse. Not really thinking in hindsight how far that ride actually was. So it took me about, and this is on a mountain bike, it took me about 8 hours with a bunch of stops and a lot of water, and I got lost on a farm, and I landed in Syracuse, New York. And I remember getting about 1 mile from my in-laws' house, and I was so tired. My legs were so spent. Never riding a bike beyond 5 miles. I just went all the way to Syracuse. So the kind of how I even got into all this is my wife goes back to work on Monday, and she goes to her boss, and her boss, Joey D or Joe Dagger, awesome dude, probably one of the best men I've ever met. And Joey D, if you hear this, don't take that to your head. All right, so she goes in and she starts talking to her coworker. She's like, yeah, my husband rode his bike from Rochester to Syracuse. And he pops out of his office. He's like, what'd you say? What happened? Have him out Wednesday night. So then that was where I really got into mountain biking 15 plus years ago. It's because I was dumb enough to ride my bike from Rochester to Syracuse by myself on my first real ride ever.
Your mountain bike.
My mountain bike. My Trek 4300.
Not your road bike, but your mountain bike.
My mountain bike. It was not just anything. It was just my beat up, or actually it was brand new at the time, mountain bike, which I still have. Still sits in my closet somewhere, or my garage. But that's how I got into it. And then I met out with a group of guys, and it was Joey D and T-Poke, and I believe it was Rick Amring, which is actually one of the owners of the company. And I introduced myself, and they're like, okay, wheels it is. I'm like, okay. So that's how I got into mountain biking. And then for the next 10 years, every Wednesday night, 6 p.m., we meet out, we go ride, we hang out. When we're done riding, we go to a bar, drink a beer, go home to our families. And it's the addiction that I've come to love about cycling in general.
So tell us a little bit how the company launches, and sort of you still have a day job and you're running this company, and can you give us a little background there and how that works?
Yeah, so all my friends went and bought fat bikes. I remember to this day because I had just bought a Specialized Epicomp 29er off of eBay, and my wife was already killing me because of how much money I spent on this thing. And all my buddies went out and bought fat bikes. They bought Bikes Direct, Boris something or another bikes. And I remember they all went out riding, and I couldn't for the first time. Because we used to go snowshoeing before that. So I was like, well, looks like I got to go buy a bike. So I went to the wife, and the wife's like, yeah, no. So I'm like, all right, well, before I go buy a bike, let me go see if I even like this. I went out riding, and I remember I borrowed one of my buddies, Metz's bike, I believe is who I borrowed. And I went out, and it was the worst ride I ever had in my whole life. It was -2, absolute freezing. I didn't have the right gear. I went out riding. I was miserable. My friend Patsy, which is Rick, he's one of the owners, I said, I hated it. I was like, this is the stupidest thing in the world. And then I was like, you know why? I was like, because it ain't done right. So then I said, well, I can't afford one of these expensive fat bikes. At the time, it was like $2,000 for junk Like,
What time period are we talking about here?
what are we in now? We are in 2018
2019 now.
So I started the company in 2015. So this was probably 2013, 2014.
Okay, so we're just getting to where the fat bikes are starting to get light enough to be rideable, right? But they were still kind of heavy, a lot of them.
Yeah. So basically, at this point, it was 2x10s at the best. You were going to get, nothing was tubeless, like that didn't exist. The bikes were either steel or just becoming aluminum. And they were just heavy and slow. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And so that's when it kind of kicked in. I'm like, all right, I'm going to look at this. So I had talked about manufacturing my own bikes. Like, why can't I do it? I can do it, right? Go call somebody and we'll get some bikes made. So I started doing the research. And I remember my favorite conversation that I ever had with all my riding buddies. And I remember to this day, we were sitting there after a ride, and I'm like, I think I'm going to start a bike company. And they all told me, you were crazy, it'll never work. And I'm like, I think it will. And this is part of this, and I'm already working a full-time job. You know, everyone knows I'm in law enforcement. I'm a cop in the city here in Rochester. So I'm already working a full-time job, and I've always been into being an entrepreneur. I used to own my own company when I was 18, and I'd gotten away from all that, and I was like, you know what? I can do this. So I started doing a ton of research. And I had to find, being a guy who, unlike you or you, I've never been in the bike industry when I started my company. Never worked at a bike shop. Never sold a bike. I literally was just a guy who enjoyed riding bikes that wanted to make something that was affordable for a cop. That was the best way to explain it. I needed it to be affordable. So I started making my own. And the original idea to Growler was a $1,000 bike. And like Henry Ford says, you can have any color you want as long as it's black. Yeah. So that was the idea. I was going to literally produce 1,000 of one bike in a good build. The idea was to make it a good build, try to get it to that 30-pound mark at that time, which was incredibly light for fat bikes, and produce that. And I remember I threw it up on Kickstarter as my idea. I ordered the parts. I got everything set up. I brought my very first one in, and I remember throwing it up on Kickstarter, and I had a ton of people calling us going, hey, what is this, what is this, but I didn't really have anybody buy the bike. Until I got a phone call from a customer out of Colorado. And he says, hey, I want to buy one of your bikes. I love what you guys are doing, but I don't want black. And this is kind of where Growler really changed the whole company and our model in general. No one really cared 100% about what we were truly producing, but it wanted to fit their lifestyle of how they were doing. So what I mean by that is when you buy a car, and this is where all the car dealerships and all these car companies do so well, when you buy a car, you buy it very customized to you, or you buy the one that's on sale. So that's your two choices. You either buy something that you really love and you're willing to spend the money for something that's going to fit your needs, right? Say you're in construction, you need a truck. Say you are a moving company, well, you need a van. Whatever the system is. Bikes are no different, except for in our industry, you can't do that. So right now, if you go to the big brands, you buy what they offer, and that's what you get. The chances of you buying that bike custom out is incredibly expensive, or you just ain't going to get it. So this is where Growler came in. Once that happened, I realized, well, people want different colors. And then literally the next call, someone goes, hey, can I have this bike in a different color? But I also want this. And I want to say it was a drivetrain change. I think they want an X01 instead of the X9 that we were offering at the time. I was like, yeah, I think we can do that. So long story short is those two calls that were almost like back-to-back, day-to-day, changed the way our company was going to produce our bikes. And what was even, kind of the eye-opening part was we actually failed in our raising the funds.
Kickstarter.
Thank you. In our Kickstarter, we actually failed in our Kickstarter. What happened immediately after that is I went on to MTBR and I launched a forum saying, hey, here's who we are. Here's this company. Here's what we are about and who we are. And that was the beginning of just complete insanity. And as soon as you can figure out that it was all custom, it was game on. So now it kind of goes back into where we're at today, which is we can produce pretty much anything. And I don't know if you guys saw the unicorn bike just recently. It looks like a unicorn vomited on a bike. It is the most crazy thing I've ever seen, and it was gorgeous and ugly at the same time. The customer loves it. And that is what we want. We want it to represent you. And we want it to be what the rider wants. And that's kind of the biggest part to cycling is, in cycling, everybody's so unique in everything we do, from how you want your geometry to the way the bike feels, and more importantly, how it looks. And that's what we can deliver, and we can deliver it fast, which is the second problem in the industry. So, yes?
So yeah, so when you talk about like this kind of this customizable and response turnaround for people. So let's talk a little bit about kind of, what is the current state of that? I mean, there's things like you can get on Trek's website, right? And you can start to kind of piece together some things. And they give you some color schemes and start doing the things. And they have a turnaround of X, which I'm sure you're aware. But now you're saying, okay, well, I can do it in less than X. So, what is that, and how are you able to do that for people? How are you able to process that when somebody says, look, I want my fat bike, I want it like this, and this, and I want these colors. By the time they hit the go and they hit buy now, what's the turnaround for them for delivery?
So anything that's on the website, which is the basics of our crazy designs, you're looking at roughly 5 to 7 business days from the point you order, through powder coating, through bike building, and getting it into a box. From there, depends on where you're in the country. In the Northeast today, all the way on the other side of the country, it's 3 to 4 days. And what's interesting about how we do that in particular is we fully assemble our bikes, take off the front wheel, put the bike fully in the box, and just like that, no other modifications. It's a fully assembled bike. Even the handlebars are all attached. Ship the bike fully assembled, customer picks it up, you put the tire on. So that is the basics of our customizable designs. But sometimes customers say, hey, I want something ludicrous. I want something that no one else has. And that can always be accomplished too. And it really depends on how customizable they want. Rob Baker, you'll see him, he's pretty vocal Growler supporter. So thank you, Rob. And you'll look at his bike. His bike's called the Devil Dog. So what we ended up doing is we ended up getting this custom Marine Corps head badge, custom made, literally by hand out of, oh man, I feel bad because she was awesome. I'll figure it out where that was, but it was somewhere out of the Midwest or the West Coast. But she handmade a custom badge. Well, that takes 2 weeks. So we had that brought in. And we have some customers who want custom hand-built wheels with certain types of hubs or parts. Well, that'll take a week or so. So usually, if you even go crazy, you're talking a week and a half, 2 weeks. But the reason why it's possible is for 2 things. Everything we try to do in this company is modular. So all of our componentry is exactly the same no matter what version of our fatties you run. You want to run a Mr. Big Stuff, you want to run a Winter Ale, you want to run a Nitro Stout or a Double Stout or a Session. It's all the same components. So the only thing that's truly changing within our system is the bike frame and the color you want. So since everything starts raw in our company, we literally powder coat in-house using my other company, Twisted Metal Inc. And but we use that as our basis. That's what allows us to move through the customization process so incredibly fast. If it wasn't for the team in Twisted Metal, Growler doesn't exist. But that's it. And then we have a killer team of bike builders. And what's interesting to how we do bikes is in most places you have a schedule of 9 to 5. And the toughest part to 9 to 5 is that people can't always live life the way they want to when they're stuck to a schedule. So the way we function is we have a group of bike builders and we allow them to come in and build whenever they're ready. So all the bikes go up on a board, just like you guys saw here today. And what ends up happening is they come in and they're like, hey, what bike goes next? Well, if you look at our board, it's bike built right from left. And as soon as they come in, like Alex came in he's going to be here for 4 or 5 hours today. So he's going to build up 2 bikes. Kareem's probably going to come tonight. Steve will probably come a couple of times tomorrow. And we'll kind of run through that system. So we can push literally, a couple hundred bikes a month through a system just like this.
So tell us a little bit about why this works with why fat bikes. I know you said you tried a fat bike, it was heavy, you thought you could do it better. That seems to be your primary focus right now. Do you see this working in road bikes and cross bikes? Does it go out there, or does it work better with fat bikes for some reason?
Fat bikes is so let's go back to the other part of this. All my friends now ride fat bikes, and I know there's a lot of talk in the industry when you go to the big brands and you talk to some of the big magazines. They say fat bikes are dead, and I can 100% promise you they're not. And this is where that niche branding or that niche company comes in and becomes something different. So what we saw was a lack in the fat bike world what I saw was a lack of quality bikes in the fat bike world that was relatively cheap that you can afford. So that's where I started. I knew enough about them to be dangerous, and I knew, I didn't know everything about the industry that helped me get through it. So, and what I mean by that is there's a lot of mistakes that I see, and we've talked about this already, a lot of mistakes that I see in the industry in general that I didn't even know existed, so I never try to repeat the same problems they have. So when it comes to why our process or why we start with fat bikes, is because no one else was doing a good quality fat bike at the time. So I was able to come up with something relatively cheap that had all the main standards that I would put on my normal bike. So my normal bike would always come with carbon handlebars, carbon seat posts. At the time, tubeless was just kind of becoming a big trend. Tubeless was the first thing I did on every bike that I had before that. So just those three things reduce the weight and make the bike actually functioning. And in the fat bike world, wheels are everything. If you have lighter wheels, your bike's going to feel like a trail bike. So that's what we did. I made the bike that I would personally ride. And if I'm going to ride it, there's other people just like me who like to drink beer and who like to ride bikes. So they're going to do the same. And it just seems to keep getting better and better. Now what's happening is we've become incredibly good at designing bikes for a rider. Give you an example. I had a customer call me yesterday and says, hey, I found him on a Facebook page originally. I sent him a message that said, hey, check out Growler Bikes. He sent me a message. He goes, hey, why should I buy your bike? So we went through the process, but telling him why he should buy our bike doesn't actually help him. The reason why he should buy our bike is because we can make the bike for him without costing him an arm and a leg. So where he lived was in Ohio, right on the border of the Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio kind of area, right there, the snow belt. And it's interesting because his friend says, hey, whatever you do, don't buy a suspension fork on a fat bike. So that's a way to do it, right? You don't have to have a suspension fork. Our bikes come stock with them, so there's nothing too crazy about that. So what I told him in particular, I said, do you race, right? So let's figure out what he's going to use his bike for. Do you race? He's like, no, I don't race. Perfect. You need a suspension fork. Well, why do you need one? And the reason why is because it just doesn't beat you up. It's more enjoyable when you're not getting banged around on your bike all day long. That's why none of us drive around in race cars. Because race cars have really hard suspension designed to go fast. Great. But we can all drive a BMW instead and be comfortable and go fast. So that's kind of what we do here. What we do is we specifically help you pick the bike that's going to fit your needs the best. There is a downfall to all this. So as we start talking about how we develop the bikes for the customer, we actually have what is the right terminology is analysis paralysis, where there's so many options in our company now that we literally have people that go, I don't know, I'm just going to go get something else.
Just tell me what I need.
Just tell me what I need.
Yeah.
So if you go to our website, you'll notice that we have brew your own bike, that is that custom side, and then bikes on tap. So thinking of a brewery, right? Microbrewery, that's what we are pretty much. Bikes on tap are literally bikes designed for the season. The winter ale that we offer right now is pretty much it'd be the perfect winter fatty that you can make. It has Bud and Lou, right? So it's designed to go perfect in snow. It has a Macedon comp, which is designed for negative 20 degrees or warmer of temperature, where if you ride a Bluto, it ain't going to work as well. It has everything set up tubeless. You have dropper posts, so you can get your leg over the seat when you have baggy pants on or snow pants or whatever you're riding in. So we specifically designed the bike for that. And what happens is customers never, like when they start doing this, we sell. So last year we tried this for the first time. We sold more winter ales than we did any other bike the whole year. So this year I'm like, you know what? Let me do it differently. Let me pick that bike again and let's pick a little bit better version. Completely sold, like hands down, that bike is sold more than anything else we offer. All it is a Mr. Big Stuff with a really cool paint job and a certain layout. And then when spring comes, we're going to have the summer ale. Summer ale will come back through, and it'll be a summer-specific bike. So it's going to be a bike that's a 27.5 by 4.0 tire, because that is a faster rolling tire than a 26 by 4.8. So it's those small differences that we can help the customer with, so they're not just wasting money. So that when they get the bike home, they don't have to go to their wife and go, oh yeah, honey, don't worry about those parts. Those were cheap. They're like $10 on sale. And we all know if our wives sell our bike parts for what we told her, we're all going to be broke.
Right.
So,
well, that was what I was impressed with. I bought a fat bike probably around the same time you first rode one that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I still have it. It's a rigid frame. And I had a really nice big hit carbon fiber mountain bike, from a top brand, expensive bike, and I was enjoying mountain bike. I'm more of a roadie in general, but I was enjoying the mountain bike end of it very much with that. And then I got this fat bike. It was a rigid frame, about a third of the cost. Not super cheap, but certainly cheaper than that.
Yeah.
Everything's stock. And I went out and rode it, and I was like, geez, even not forget the winter and the cold and all that other stuff, just on the trails, it was pretty much as fun as that big hit bike was at a third of the cost. No suspension, not a fork, nothing, you know what I mean? And it could eat up a lot of stuff. And even some really technical stuff, other than I need wider bars and a dropper post for some of that really technical stuff. But even like really technical stuff that's really probably beyond my ability, certainly beyond my ability with a skinnier tire, I could go and ride and do a ton with. And I was like, geez. And I sold the other bike. I was like, what do I need this thing for when everything that I'm going to do, especially as a guy who's spending most of his time on the road bike, like, what am I going to do that I can't do with this bike here?
So this is actually a really interesting part about fat bikes, and this is why I know 100% it ain't going anywhere anytime soon. What we actually see, there's two major customers for our bikes. Customer number one is females. They buy more of our bikes than any other client
And
that we have.
I would say that's huge at the race scene. Cyclocross races, and we put on a lot of gravel races.
Yep.
We started with the gravel races. I wasn't even going to add a fat bike cat. I'm like, who wants to do a 30-mile, 40-mile,
all day long,
4,000 feet on dirt roads on a fat bike? Like, that's not going to. And I'm getting requests. Can we have a fat bike category? Sure. So we start a fat bike category, and then I'm getting a ton of requests from the women. We want a women's fat bike category, not just an open fat bike.
Yeah.
And we get more women in the fat bike there and at the cyclocross races, to where Nisbra just added a month ago a state championship field for fat bike for men and women at cyclocross races because it's just so popular. And I think the women in particular, it seems to be very popular there.
It is. And here is, and let me bring this back. I can't 100% tell you why it's becoming so popular, but it's women and it's men usually 30 or older. That is our biggest clientele. But in particular for the women, and what we're seeing is a lot of new riders that are coming into the business, or just new cyclists that are women, and they feel so much better on fat bikes than they do on a traditional 27.5 or a 29er, because the stability of the tires is phenomenal. And that in particular is, I think, what makes them so popular. That 30 older or 30-year-old male or older, what happens is and they're men of all ages race. I get it. But most of us are never going to be racers. I'm 38 years old. I'm never going to be a racer, right? I've given up all my hopes of being some sort of athletic pro football player, so that goes along with all my racing aspirations as well. But I do love riding. So for me, I don't care about how fast I can run or I can ride on the bike. What I care about is, can I go out with my buddies, ride with them, have a good time, and then go bang out any technical spot I've ever run. And one of our favorite places, and this is one of the things I love about cycling in general, is me and my buddies every May 25th, Memorial Day weekend, we go to Ellicottville for our annual, this will be our 11th year, our annual mountain bike group ride. And we start on a Thursday, and we ride all the way through Sunday. And we do it all at Eville or Ellicottville over near Holiday Valley. It is one of the most technical, challenging places to ride with the rock gardens and just the roots and nastiness. 2 years ago, I took a 29er Plus, which is one of the things our bikes can do. Last year, I took a 27.5 by 4.0 through it. Absolutely felt like I was riding a completely different trail. It made it so much smoother and faster. And this is coming from when I used to ride a 29er Specialized Epic, a legit race bike that was full suspension, decked out. I would have traded that in a second for what we have today. And that's not just bragging about our bikes. That's just fat bikes in general.
No, it's absolutely.
It is.
Like I went down last time I did. Went down to eastern Pennsylvania around Lehigh Valley. I don't know if you've ever ridden down there. A lot of fairly technical riding, big rock drops, things that are beyond my ability in general. My brother-in-law lives down there. He's a real good mountain biker, and usually we go down and he just kicks my ass all over the place, and I just try not to die. And I'm riding with him. And, I've done it enough now where it's better and it's enjoyable now, and it wasn't at first.
Yeah.
But when I had that big hit bike, I could eat everything up with it, and I was like, this is fun. This is where it really belongs. More so than around here. We don't have the rock gardens and the drops when you're doing the real local riding, And then I took the fat bike down there. I'm like, man, I might be in trouble with this bike. There's no suspension, you know. And it was a blast. It was so fun. There was a couple times where I came a little high on the handlebars, and that big fat tire helped me like grab it and not endo over. I was so in love with my fat bike when I left, and it wasn't snow, it wasn't trail. You know what I mean? It was the middle of summer.
And what's interesting is I always tell people it's like cheating. Being on a fat bike's like cheating. The bigger tires give you better grip. When you learn how to ride the bike, so usually it takes, what I always tell people is give it 2 weeks. Once you learn how to throw your bike around, it's ridiculous. You can't downhill faster than me on my fatty. You give me my nitro stout with a set of carbon rims, and you're not downhilling faster than me. I have full faith in that bike. On a 27.5 by 4.0, let's go. I'll unleash the bike and I'll let it do what it can do. Because once you trust it, it's amazing. And those bikes have so much forgiveness. It's like drag racing and having launch control on your Ferrari. It just can do already. It's automatic for you. And it's one of the things I absolutely love, and I think this is why the industry in general is growing so much, in particular with women overall and with the males that are 30 or older. Because I get a lot of times where the males are, hey, look, I've had a couple accidents. I don't want to get hurt anymore. I just want to go ride. And I'm like, go take a fatty. Because we let people just take our fatties for a day or two or a week, whatever you want. They sit in a trailer if they don't. So take them out. Take our demos out and go have a good time. And they'll go take them out and they'll be like, yeah, this is the right way. Because they aren't worried about getting smashed up anymore. Unless they want to push the envelope. But through the normal trails that we have here, I mean, we have, 8 mountain bike parks here in Rochester? All the way from OCP coming all the way down to what's the one that's down south of here that's more of a nature preserve thing?
Not Harry Hollister.
No, Harriet's fun. I love Harriet, one of my favorites. But
Harriet's great.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of parks. You have Harriet Hollister,
OCP's probably the most technical. You get Finger Lakes Trail. There's definitely some because of the way that just erodes a lot, so you get a lot of erosion through the creeks and stuff. So that always is kind of
Tryon used to be a little more challenging, but now it's been opened up.
Yeah, and even and so all these different trails, the bikes allow you to do whatever you want, and that is the beauty. And throughout the Northeast, this is the trend. Now, what's becoming more interesting to me is where we're starting to see them pop up on the East Coast, on the West Coast. So we're starting to get quite a few people that are on the West Coast that are picking up our bikes to go take it in wide open deserts or just in open terrain. And it's interesting because my first thought was, well, why would you want to do that? Let's put 27.5 plus wheels on it instead. But the reality is that the trail smooths out. They don't wash out in the sand. They're not getting, especially if you run Jumbo Jim snake skins, you're not getting the goat heads poking through. So it's just really building the bikes to match them, and the bikes can go anywhere.
Right.
And then when the season ends, which is what we used to have the problem with, instead of putting my snowshoes on and hiking through the woods, I don't know who would want to do that, but instead of doing that or hopping on my road bike or something of that nature, which, no offense, I'm sorry, man, but hopping on a road bike, I'm a mountain guy, so, but hopping on my road bike, instead of doing that, I can now just stay in the woods,
right?
Where I don't have to worry about it for myself, And for me, that's where I love. I love just going out with my buddies. I love just riding, and I want that experience for everybody else. And usually, if I get somebody who's new to the industry or new to cycling, I'm like, go find a friend, because that's what mountain biking is about. Mountain biking is about everything else, and you get to go do it outdoors. So find a friend that you can ride with. It doesn't matter if anybody's in shape. Take your time, ride to the next trailhead, wait for your buddy, talk about bike parts that you're going to buy next week that you're probably never going to buy, and then go off and do it again. And then go to the next trail and do it again. That's growler. That's mountain biking. That's fat biking. And that's the culture that I absolutely love, that even I am starting to create. So I don't know if you guys had a chance, but we have a Facebook group that's for growler owners only. It's called the Growler Brew House. And it's awesome to see the interaction between growler owners, because it's just like being in the bar with your buddy after a ride. And everyone just starts throwing up photos, or someone has a problem with something or an idea, or they want to try something new. They throw out the idea, hey, what do you guys thoughts about this? And then everyone throws in.
Yeah. There's a lot to that, too. I was telling you guys, when we just started, we do our club does a New Year's Day ride. We try to do it every year. Yeah. And last couple of years, for the several years, it's been on the fat bikes. And 2 years ago, or last year, it was -4, and there were 4 of us who showed up and rode the snowmobile trails -4. But this year we had a pretty, 7, 8 guys that showed up to ride it, and there was like one guy on a regular mountain bike, and some of the guys went and rode gravel, and then we kind of had some beers and fire afterward. But with the fat bike guy, I think I was about the only one who wasn't on a growler. Sorry, I got it before you were
that's
open.
okay.
In all fairness, but all these guys, and they all just like are all about it. You know, they love your bikes, and they're all talking up and comparing everything they have. So I think you're right. You've really developed a sense of a community there. Yeah,
it's a culture, and I always tell people this, it's because we get asked all the time, what makes yours better than everyone else's? The reality is if you buy a bike in today's society, Specialized, Trek, Giant, Kona, whoever it is, they're all good. Like, we're talking about specializing something for somebody, not going crazy. And then the second part of it is, like you said, when you showed up to the trailhead, now you have 5 growlers and there's 6 of you guys hanging out.
Right.
Well, it's more than just beyond the bikes. And I know that might sound weird as a bike salesperson. I'm supposed to say, oh, my bike's better. Look, there's a ton of great bikes out there. You know what I mean? The Trek Farleys are a beautiful bike. Like, I love looking at those bikes. But the reality is there's more to the bike industry than just the bicycle itself. And this is where the bike industry is losing. In all realm of it, it is the exact part of what makes people hate going to, I apologize, but to some bike shops. Right. And, it's a double-edged sword because we'll just take a big brand, right? You can pick any version of them because they're all kind of the same when it comes down to it. The bike shop 30 years ago, you'd go in and you would talk to an expert about whatever it was. And sometimes it's not even talking about bikes. It's just that brotherhood, or that friendship that you gain with the local guy who loves doing what you do as well. And I get calls all the time that, hey, thanks for spending this 20 minutes with me on the phone. That's longer than I talk to anybody in the 5 bike shops I've been to. That's ludicrous. If you think about a business model where you go into a bike shop and the people there really aren't that interested in talking to you, that's a problem. That original bike that I had bought that I rode all the way to Syracuse, that was bought in a bike shop, and I got poo-pooed almost into the reason I almost didn't buy it originally. But I really wanted a bike, and I'm stubborn, so I bought what I wanted anyways. Right. But I almost didn't buy it because of the atmosphere I was buying it from. And that's sad. So in ours, I always tell people all the time, if you want to come hang out with me, come hang out with me. Come hang out at the shop. Pick up a tool. I don't care. Do whatever you want. I mean,
well, that's where bike shops, you talked a little about before we started, and I think we need to talk about that too, about where your model works and sort of the future of bike shops. But in my opinion, that's where bike shops that do survive is they need to be a social hub. Yes. Right? When I work just part-time in the bike shop in Geneseo in the summer when I'm not working during the winter, and most of the time when I'm in there, I'm just sitting there, people come in and we just talk. We just hang out. Sometimes it's about bike stuff, like you said. Sometimes it's not, and you kind of are able to have those conversations. And that's sort of the most fun about it. But on the other end, from the bike shop perspective, there's pressure to sell because you got to carry a lot of numbers, you got to carry a lot of lines, and you narrow into certain models in certain setups.
Because the brands... Go ahead.
So I was going to say there's just kind of two elements. So kind of one of the things is everything new, everything old becomes new again, right? And your older bike shops years ago, it was the group rides. Yeah. It was,
and it should be.
And this will go back. I start dating myself here, but going back to the days of the handlebars rides that we did out of Tonawanda, Kenmore, the handlebars bike shop, right? And those were weekend rides that we did, and they were pretty wildcat, right? But nobody was worried about insurance or anything else. There was a lot of unsafe things that happened, but they were fun rides, and and we always hung out at the shop afterwards, and it was this crazy kind of epic stuff. We went on road bikes, right? But it'd be sprinting town lines, and there was sprinting for different various things, and but then the stuff afterwards in the bike shop, right? But it becomes this community. Those transformed into the Giros that we had out of Buffalo that I also brought then into Rochester, and then did Rochester Buffalo Giros, which still go on today, but they don't originate at the bike shop. Well, mostly because the bike shops are in populated areas, and we had to kind of get out of that. But it kind of broke some of that. So you kind of trying to bring that that is really what it was before, where people had this community that was your bike shop, but you'd go there and hang out. Kind of the other part of that too is something we talked about a little bit before, is just the Amazon.com, right? And so now people are, why are bike shops going to be less attuned to spend 20 minutes with somebody? Because they're getting showroomed. and they know that this guy is there.
Right.
He's gonna pick your brain for all your technical knowledge, and then he's gonna go buy it online somewhere and use all your expertise. And so they have to be cautious about like, how much time do I invest in somebody that's gonna walk out the door and go buy it online. So I think there's a tough balance there. Of, like how much can you do of that, and then without getting taken advantage of, right?
If we have time, I'll break it down, and I'll kind of
We got all
explain.
the time in the world.
Can we have pause real quick?
Yeah.
Let me just answer.
No, it's all right, buddy.
Whenever we want to jump in. Okay. So let's break down what some of the industry, being an outsider looking into the industry, right? So when I started this company, there is a lot about the industry that I see being a circle that repeats itself over and over. It's insanity. But that's the best way to explain it. It's insanity what we see in the bicycle industry. And here's kind of what my thoughts are. And you hit a bunch of very interesting parts. The first one, there's a bike shop that we have, Fast Eddie's. I love Eddie. Eddie is amazing for one very particular thing. His bike shop is no bigger than our office, right? So relatively small. And he crushes it. He outsells every other growler dealer that we have. And the reason behind that is how he interacts with his company, with the people that walk in. They all know Fast Eddie. You know what I mean? He has a line of fat bikes that are just, it's our fat bikes. I mean, that's what he has. He offers those. And he sells the living crap out of them. But it's not about the bike. It's never been about the bike. It's always about the experience you get when you're doing those things. So let's look at the two parts. You have the bike shop, right? The bike shop has the face-to-face interaction that the internet doesn't. So its advantage, its only advantage, is the interaction you have. Everything else in a bike shop is a negative to every aspect, right? You get the ability, so the positives, you get the ability to talk to a customer, and you get the ability to physically ride a bike. That's
And repairs when you come back.
Yes, and repairs.
Maintenance repairs.
But we have YouTube, right? YouTube has taught us, Amazon has taught us to buy cheap on the internet, and YouTube has taught us to fix the shuttle, right? It can tell us anything. But most people suck at that, so I highly recommend go find a professional bike mechanic.
I'm one of them. I don't
Well, at least they'll try it. At least they'll understand, right?
So I just show up later for stuff. I show up to my mechanic. Mike, this is broken. Can you fix it, please?
Yes. So I do highly recommend for most people, you go find a good mechanic. If it's your buddy or if it's a local bike shop, go find them. They really, that is a good tool. So that's helpful, right? But let's think about all the things that are detrimental to the bike shop. Because of the physical cost of having a storefront, and you're talking some of these bike shops are spending $20,000, $30,000 a month on a storefront, and then they're being shoved with inventory that they don't need. It's what the bike company is saying, hey, you want to carry us? You must do this. Mm-hmm. You must carry $1 million worth of my brand, and you can't have anybody else.
Right.
I don't know what industry besides cars do that, but that's ludicrous. Because if the product is going to sell, it's going to sell, and it should sell all the time. But I get why they do it, because when you order a bike from China, you have to order containers upon containers upon containers, and now they're going to go sit in a warehouse in some big box or some big brand's facility, and they have to sit there. And then this is the interesting part about the bike industry. So you have the retail side, you have the distributor side, which is where bike shops buy all their parts from, and then you have OEMs, and lastly, you have this thing called the gray market. And actually, it was a very interesting podcast I did listen to one day, and I couldn't tell you the name of it, but they talk about these four parts of the bike industry. The bike shop is the best because it gives you the best opportunity for customer service face-to-face. You can't replicate that on the internet. You can't. It's impossible. So the bike shops, if they really want to be successful, that's what they have to focus on. That has to be their number one priority. What kind of experience can I give you outside of riding the bike? Because I can ride a bike anywhere. But can I ride a bike with my friends? Can I ride a bike with a group of people? In reality, although we all look like social superheroes on the internet, because Facebook makes us look like we have 682 friends, the reality is most of us will probably have one or two good friends, and then a bunch of people that, okay, they're around. They're there and here, and we'll see them, we'll say hi, and we'll drink a beer with them when we see them. But when you get into a club, a group, same thing we do for our kids, right? I have 4 kids now. My kids are part of cheerleading or part of soccer groups, or if we can get them face to face and we can just make them have a good time, make everybody feel welcome, enjoy, get some exercise in, have a positive motivation. The prime example of this is CrossFit. I'm a CrossFitter, so I'm going to throw my little plug into there for that. CrossFit Rochester.
podcast.
A CrossFit and with a bunch of really cool ladies, right? It's a bad combination.
We're going to need more beer.
But what makes CrossFit so entertaining? It's because instead of me going to a gym by myself, right, watching all these beautiful people work out in front of me that I'll never be like, I can now do it with a group of people that are pushing me, making me enjoy it. Listen, I used to work out like a madman when I was in high school, getting into my early years of the college world, and even before I met my wife, I'd work out. Then life happens, right? And I want to spend time with my wife and kids. I don't want to go spend time, working out by myself. I want to go spend it with my family. But when you get into a group and you have other reasons, so my friends now that I ride with, like Joey D, these are the guys that we started with, Joey D and Potsy and Metzi and T-Poke and Jethro, all these guys, they're all my friends. Like, they know everything about me. Their kids call me Mr. Wheels. Like, that's what the bike shop needs to create again. Mm-hmm. And that's what Growler has done. Yeah. So when and anybody should tell you, if they ever talk to me on the phone, it's like we're best friends forever. It's what I'm good at. I'm good at talking. I'm good at making people feel welcome into the world of what we do. And even if they're not the best athletes, or maybe you are the best athlete, I want you to feel like everybody else in here. I want you just to be part of the crew.
Well, that's hugely important with the cycling things. And that was, I would say, very similar to what we've done with our club and things like that. And, the people who were at all the important things in my life are all people that I've met and developed through our bike club, and friends that are, like you said, really close friends because of that. For those same reasons. But with the bike industry in particular, it also makes it accessible because it's intimidating, whether you're talking about riding a trail or you're talking about being on the road or whatever it might be. And it's expensive, even if you get in at the sort of base level. You tell somebody at work who doesn't ride, you're like, yeah, you should get into it. Like $1,500, $2,000, you can get right started. And they're like, a bike? What? Yeah. That's crazy. You know what I mean? But then you bring them into that group and you go, yeah, but every Wednesday we have this ride and you can come and show up and hang out and we drink a few beers afterward, and you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And those kind of things are gigantically important.
And what it basically does is, what that group does is it gets them. So we all have stressful lives, right? We all work these crazy jobs, and we stress out all day long about money and kids and what's going to happen next week and whatever nonsense is happening in this world. When I get on my bike, I forget. And I just think about whatever is happening with my friends right at the point. I'm in the woods. My favorite time ever to ride is when the snow's first dropping, the ground's crisp, I'm riding at night, my light's shining on the snow, it's falling in front of me, and I'm laughing and joking with my friends. That is the peak, like the Mount Everest of my version of cycling. And that's what the bike shop needs to create. That's what Fast Eddie's has created. The good ones will do that. And then they'll do whatever they can to make the customer feel like they're getting their value out of this $2,000 bike, this $5,000 bike, whatever that is. That's a lot of money. So that's where the bike shop excels. And that's where what I see, and we will deny bike shops, because we've had multiple bike shops ask us, hey, can we take your brand? The first thing I do is go online and see what the experience is like. See what bike rides they're offering. See what they're doing. And I'll deny them. I don't care how big your bike shop is. If you're not to those cultural standards, you're never going to make it in the very end of this. And I want people who join us to have that amazing experience through the bike shop side. So bringing it back, so that's where the bike shop can excel, and that's where most of them fail. The problem with the bike shop is what we talk about, the cost of running a bike shop. Now you have 4 mechanics in the back, 2 or 3 guys are on the floor maybe, or the bike mechanic becomes the floor sales guy, and you don't have anybody who specializes in sales. But what is the internet the best at, right? What has the internet been able to do? Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Amazon, they all understand human behavior. That is the key. So what happens, and this is why people are willing to buy off Amazon. We understand what the human behavior is, right? So when we look at my company, we started as a direct-to-consumer company. We had zero intentions of ever bringing bike shops into the business. But what ended up happening was someone like Fast Eddie's, people are asking, hey, can I get a bike from him? Can I get a growler from this bike shop? And Fast Eddie's is a really good company. Yeah, you sure can. I'll sell to Fast Eddies if they give you the experience that I want. If they can do that, I'll sell it to you because it's that behavior that we're trying to get. But people are willing to spend $2,000, $3,000 for a bike over the internet without blinking. I mean, but that's what Amazon has done for us. It's given us quick access to information, much cheaper than everybody else. So
for bike shops, it's sort of like reaching out and developing your communities further and further away if you find the right hub. So it's like, hey, I like this bike shop. They're going to develop a community around my bike, so therefore I'm good with them. They're not just going to sell bikes specifically.
Bad Beaver Cycles in Butte, Montana found us because a customer went to them wanting to buy one of our bikes. That's a long ways away from here. I've never even been to Butte, Montana. I couldn't even tell you where it's at on a map, honestly. I just know it's cold and it's far away from here. So that is kind of the exactly what you're saying. It is what allows us to grow. But when I can create a culture virtually, I'm doing exactly what the bike shop is doing, but I can spread it everywhere. And I can do it cheaper. This building costs less than the local bike shops here have for their buildings. This is a big facility. And I can produce a whole ton, and I can have a crew of people sitting inside of here on the internet answering questions if we wished. Right. But and that's what's happening. So when you look at Amazon, and we talk about maybe legacy bikes, right? You talk about your business model. If I don't have to store something and I can offer it what we call just-in-time inventory, which is exactly the Growler business model, which means you want it, I'm going to make it now and give it to you. And you'll see some companies do this. There's a bunch of companies out there that do that. The problem is that process always takes so long for people to do. So what we've done inside of Growler is we basically streamlined the whole entire build process. If we can flip a bike, brand new, customized to you, maybe not the geometry of the frame, but the colors, the specs on the bike, and do that in under 5 business days and ship it to you fully assembled, why do you need a bike shop? And I say that, and I think there's a huge portion of the industry that needs the bike shop. We need the bike shops to be successful, but in the business model that we're in now, they're never going to make it in 5 years. They will drown. And so this is where Growler, and this is where we're trying to develop a business model just for the bike shops. How can we help the bike shop be successful in today's marketplace, competing against Amazon, competing against other bike shops that are sitting right next to you? So here's what we've kind of come along in, and this kind of goes along with our American-made stuff that we're going to be working on. And I've kind of spoke with this behind the scenes with you guys, but for everyone else, right now, currently, we're working on American-made frames. So our frames are going to be manufactured here in the U.S. using robotic welders, right? So that robotic system is going to allow me to develop bikes at an incredibly fast pace. So when we do that, we can bring a just-in-time inventory to our customers without having to stick them with, for instance, a local bike shop here will carry $1 million worth of a big brand name. Well, that's ludicrous. In our system, you shouldn't have to do that. And then what we always tell our bike shops, the bike shops that are successful for us, they all carry a small, a medium, and large, and an extra large of one of our frames. Doesn't matter which one. What that does is it allows you to size the customer. Beyond that, you go right onto our website. Literally, the bike shop will go onto our website, design what they want, and we ship the bike shop that bike. So this year coming up, we're planning on bringing a 27.5 Plus, a road bike, a cyclocross bike, and a fatty. Right, all American-made frames. That's the design. That's what we're aiming for. In that in itself, in total, a bike shop should have to carry at max 4 sizes in each one of those frames. And that inventory is not yearly. That'll be the span of the life of the bike. That's incredible. So you're talking now making an investment instead of $100,000 a year. You can literally fully deck out a whole entire bike shop from, and we play in the middle to high end range, but at one point we're hoping to be able to do low end all the way down to just a basic little cruiser bike. You should be able to deck out a whole entire bike for $100,000 in demo bikes that you can rent out, you can just give out, whatever it is, and that $100,000 will last 4 years. That's what a cyclable bike should be roughly. And $100,000 investment over 4 years, that's only $25,000 a year. and your product is never outdated ever. At any point in time right now, and I'll give you a good example, when Eagle came out, the switch happened in less than a year. So they came out with the Eagle GX and the XOs and all that, and as soon as NX hit, that was only a year apart. And now it's hard to find good quality bikes without NX Eagle at minimum, right? But if you're stuck with $100,000 or $1 million worth of inventory, good luck getting rid of it because you ain't going to be able to. So our business model allows a bike shop, when we're fully up in production, is to carry a minimal amount of inventory and have everything ready to go anytime they want. And we never run out.
And that goes to that experience you're talking about where sometimes people feel like they're pushed into certain things because you get that a lot, even, in a small bike shop, you've got so many bikes in there, and then you come in and you don't really fit any of those bikes. But I got this one on the floor. Now I can order one for you and get it for you, but at the same time I'm not going to make as much on that, and I got to get rid of this one on the floor. So you end up that sort of give and take of like, do I want to push you toward this one that's right here, or am I going to order the one that you want and set that up, which is a lot harder. And a lot of times with the brands you're dealing with, you can't really customize. You're not really customizing anyway. You're just ordering a different size or something slightly different before you go through and maybe you have to take it apart and rebuild it if you really wanted to customize it.
Yeah, and so that talks about like the bike shop side, right? So you have the bike shop, and then you have OEMs like us, which were kind of, in my own mind, because I don't know how the bike industry worked before I existed, I can't tell you if it's right or wrong. I can only tell you that the way that we're looking at the business is completely different than what we're seeing in the industry currently. And what's scary about the industry, so we talked about the bike shop, we talked about like distributors where the bike shop buy all the parts from. That's another problem. The distributors themselves, and there are some pretty big ones out there, you can technically go online to Jensen and buy that part cheaper than the bike shop can buy it from the distributors that they have access to. And that's a ludicrous model, right? You can't compete with that. I don't care what bike shop you are. The only way you can compete with that is if people are generous enough to pay you more.
And that's been a problem that's been going on for several years now. And I think there went on the UK. Was it Wiggle or was it another one that they just got a kind of correcting some of that because of the pricing that they were doing, and it drives bike shops out because I can't. Why would I buy this whole bike from you when I can go buy that component group for 20% less than the bike shop can buy it? So they stop carrying it, and it becomes, there's a lot of change that's going on around that. And I think, and it's interesting that when you talk about kind of getting into the road bike model, because it is obviously it's a whole different paradigm.
Yes.
When you start getting into, because now sizing is down to 2 centimeter differences, not small, medium, large. So there's obviously going to be some hurdles to go there. But I think one of the things that I think you bring to the table, though, is that customizable part.
Yes.
And it's something I talked about with actually it's a client of mine who's starting a shop in the Philly area, and they're carrying the lesser brands because of that. Because they're saying, look, a lot of people are already riding Specialized Trek and Giant. Right, those are big ones. So people are looking for something a little bit different. I'm looking for something that's not the run of the mill that everybody has. And I think that's maybe where you can really come in there. And he's doing exactly that experience type thing. Actually, maybe I should connect you guys up.
Yeah,
because I think it would be a really good mesh for what he's trying to do. He's basically creating the same thing from the other side of that.
Yes.
Obviously, the road market's always a little bit different. The culture's a little bit different.
Let's talk. I actually kind of want to talk a little about that. If you're going to go into the road market too, a little bit to see what your ideas are there. Because I think one of the things that I would, if we think about the stereotypical, especially if we're talking about the road market for the racers, right? Like whether that's a market you're interested in or not, or whether it really generates enough money to be worried about or not. I think if you talk to the road racers, they're going to say, well, is that bike you're going to build, is that going to perform the same way, particularly in the frame quality? You get a Trek or a Specialized or whatever else, you've got pro racers who are testing that, racing that, performing on that. So if I'm a racer and I'm going and I got $5,000-$6,000 to spend and I want to do well in the local races, and I'm going to go, okay, I know Specialized has that, right? So are you interested in competing in there, and can you do that, or is that just not a market that you're that concerned with?
So interesting subjects when we talk about that. So we talk about manufacturing and our abilities. So right now we're bringing our manufacturing back from China. We're going to bring it back into the U.S., and we're going to be manufacturing our frames here in the U.S., right? That's aluminum. And with that, there's a whole different world that I had to learn even then of engineering, all the design work, tubing sizes, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's insane how complicated a simplistic bike is. So when we talk about can we compete in these big markets, right? So really let's go to the racer world. If you're a racer, you're probably going to be running some sort of carbon frame or maybe some high ultralight steel frame. That's usually the two that you'll see, but it's going to be carbon. That's
Maybe for the road, you're going to see carbon. On the gravel stuff, which I think might be maybe that's a separate question too. I think that's an interesting area for what you're doing, a really interesting area for what you're doing for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about road racers, you're going to see them primarily on carbon.
So one of the things that we're working on, and this is going to take a little bit different process, but one of the aluminum suppliers that we're working with also works in carbon. And what's beautiful about owning two companies, one of them being a powder coat company, is I actually have all the tools in-house right now to do our own handmade carbon frames here in this shop. So what's very interesting about that process is we are working with them currently, and we're going to develop all the American-made stuff first. That's my goal. I want to bring our manufacturing back, and we can still order our carbon frames from Taiwan just like we do now. Because we do offer a carbon 23-pound race bike, and actually it won Fat Bike Nationals last year. So it exists. It's here. But as we transition over, we're going to be bringing that capability here to the U.S., and we're going to be building it in-house. And what's interesting about that, and if you look at American-made carbon, it's expensive. And it all goes back to the same problems. The same problems with the bicycle industry is that even with the American-made frames that we're about to produce, we're still going to be cheaper. And I'll give you an example. Our $1,900 Mr. Big Stuff aluminum frame is out-speccing Trek's $2,600 Farley 7, right? That's a $700 difference. Our American-made frames, when they come here, are going to be closer to our current price than it is to their standard price, and they're bringing them from overseas. Just because it comes, and it's funny, because when I was talking to somebody in the industry, the very first thing we talked about, he goes, you realize that you can, you're going to be able to put a premium on all your bikes and make more profit? I said, we make enough profit. That's the problem with the industry, is everybody wants to make some giant profits out of their minds, and they're forgetting about why we're doing this. If we can do and make a profitable company and smoke the big brands, that's our plan. My plan is to make an American-made frame that's not going to raise the price of what we currently offer. That's ludicrous in today's industry because we're using a different method to do it. So when we're going after the racers, sure, you got to think the level of racer is pro racer and everybody else who thinks they're pro, right? I know lots of people who race in this other level that want super expensive, fast bikes. But if we can produce a bike that is geometry-wise pretty darn close, and weight-wise incredibly close, right? And you're not worried about the quality, and you're not worried about the geometry, because the geometries are relatively all the same for all these bikes.
They are now.
They are now, because when something works, everyone's going to go to it. I mean, that's why we have aerodynamics in general, because once someone realized I can save gas mileage in a car that's more aerodynamic, everyone made a car that was sleek with tight designs. And then as soon as someone changes that, they're all going to change to go with it. Bikes are no different. So right now, almost all cyclocross bikes relatively are similar geometry. Road bikes are similar, not the same, but similar. You're going to have differences in each one of them. Maybe the top tube's different, or maybe the head tube angle changes by 0.5%. Okay. That's not to the point. And my favorite part is I always have people go, well, does your bike ride better than theirs? If you rode both of our bikes side by side with the exact same componentry, set up exactly the same, you would never be able to tell the difference between ours or anybody else's. And the reality is because most people, they regurgitate what's on the internet, and they actually don't understand the real feel of what's on there. Right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
Well, I've seen it for years, right?
Yeah.
Racing road bikes for way too many years, and you see that kind of that thinking of, and it's gotten less though because everything's consolidated down to this where there used to be a lot more differences, and you had hand built frames when I started racing, right? And you'd get these lugged frames that were brazed together, and then you had artwork with them, and and like I still had my old Pinarello that with the really lousy decals that flaked off after the second year. It was the typical of the Italian bikes at the time. Put the decals on, don't bother clear coating it, But it was a fantastic. But then you had all these differences in geometries, and people wanted to spec out different geometries. And now, because in order to make carbon that's affordable, you've only got a couple of options of mold, and then they're gonna keep these the same. Yes. And then you also see, and especially you see in the track world, because there's even less track frames out there, you see the same designs rebadged, and you're like, wait a minute, that one looks just like that one looks like this. And they're coming off the same molds, and they're buying it because that's the only way you can keep them affordable and get good carbon layups, not without the cheap and voids. So you're like, okay, so they're making them, and then somebody's badging them, and so your differences do become less and less on it. It's really kind of brought that down.
It has.
And I've said many times to people, I'm like, I can't tell. And they're like, do you like it? I'm like, yeah, I like it, but it's also new, and the other one was a couple of years old. Yeah. And would I be able to tell the difference between these three brands? I'd have to ride them, get off of one, get onto the other one, and maybe be able to pick up a difference. Maybe.
In your experience, how many years have you been riding?
33 years.
How many years have you been riding?
10.
Yeah. Unless the technology changes within the design you have. For instance, that jump from 26 to 29er, that was a huge jump. Right. From cantilever brakes to disc brakes, yeah, that was a huge jump. But that's a component part. Right. That's not the frame. I couldn't tell you any difference between my Kona, truly, that I used to have my Kona Hey 29er and my Specialized Epic. I couldn't tell you the difference except for...
And that's why your touch on paint is really huge, because people could see that, right?
Yes, it's a personality.
And wheels. That's what I always tell people in the bike shop, right? They're like, well, should I do Ultegra or should I do Dura? Should I do 105 or should I do Ultegra? Honestly, you're not going to know the difference. You're not racing enough. You're not riding enough. And I'm not either necessarily. You know what I mean? It's not just you're not. But wheels, you'll notice the difference, right?
Yeah, because it's a component,
and you notice the difference in how much you enjoy the color. And for road frames, I'd say the way frames carry speed and like how stiff and quick they get up to speed.
But that's all wheels. Comfort. A lot of times, that's wheels that create that.
Tires.
Yeah.
Tires and wheels. So if you look at our
I'll put my tubular pitch in there, right?
Sure.
You want a better ride? Put tubular tires on them, because the bikes ride much better.
So one of the new trends that we were looking at the other day was tubeless road bikes, right? So just going straight tubeless, nothing inside.
I tried that this year.
How was it?
It wasn't good.
Okay.
It was tough. Now it was not an old frame, but it was a frame that, I don't know. It wasn't a disc brake frame, I guess. Right, which I have a caliper frame, so it's narrow. Yep. So I think I started with a 25, and they balloon up a lot more. So they were rubbing on the frame a lot. So we went down again, it was still rubbing, and then I got a gouge in it, and then I had to replace the whole thing. And then the wheels kept getting water in when I was racing in the rain, they kept getting water in them. So then I had to take the tires out to get the water off, and then to reseed the tubes. So I was like, forget it. I just use a damn tube because it's just too much work.
Yeah.
But when it was riding, it was wonderful. It was comfortable, and there were times where I'd pick something up, it would seal up pretty quickly, and the pressure would stay high, which was always my concern with running tubeless on road. Before that was, I'm going to lose so much pressure that if I'm racing on it, it's going to screw me up anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like a triathlon where I finished the leg on it, and then it's still worth it, maybe, I guess.
Yeah. When it comes to things like this is where I say geometry matters to a point. Most people can't tell me the difference between a Nitro Stout and a Mr. Big Stuff if they hopped on and ride it. Although I can tell you when you ride the two, the carbon is going to dampen your vibrations in the ride, and it's a little bit lighter, right? It's 2.5, 3 pounds lighter to have a Growler Mr. Big's aluminum frame or a carbon versus aluminum frame. But the reality is when customers are like, hey, I want to get a carbon frame, and I'm like, all right, great. What carbon wheels are you going to get with it? And that's where the question goes into, I just want to get the carbon frame. It's a waste of money. In our world, we're talking 30-pound bikes, right? 23 to 30-pound bikes, somewhere in there. Change the wheels. I put carbon wheels on an aluminum frame, and you'll feel like you're on a completely different bike. Change out tires for the season. In winter, and I tell this to a lot of my customers, in the winter, run Bud and Lou or a Johnny 5, something specifically designed for snow, like you would do on your car. Right. And when it comes to summer, spring, and fall, drop down to a little bit smaller tire and run something that rolls differently. A lot less tread. You don't need all the big tread. And just go rock it. And what happens is that better feel of a bike, it might weigh more. Who cares if it weighs more? Go stop eating cheeseburgers. Just ride the bike that's most functional, and it works. Now let's go to the. We're gonna go eat cheeseburgers later. No?
That's my father-in-law. He's an 85-year-old Frenchman.
Yes.
And he still rides his bike a little bit, but he rode his bike well into his 70s. And he has a steel frame, hand-built Tomasini bike, and and he would we'd ride our carbon bikes, and we'd show up with our carbon bikes with my friends, and he would go, well, and he weighs about 140 pounds, right? So he would go, well, me and my steel bike still weigh less than you and your carbon bike.
And he's right.
Yes, Robert, you are right. You do weigh less than us combined.
Well, we always just say, like, on the road, I mean, if you want to upgrade your bike, the best thing you do is always put a good fast set of wheels on.
Yeah, right.
That angular momentum is huge, and if you want to come, it's like, back way old school. In fact, somebody, my friend Chris Teroni posted some pictures the other day from back in the 80s, and I made mention, I said, hey, which wheels you got on the GEL 280s or the GL 330s? And like guys now wouldn't even know what those were, right?
I have no idea.
But I had the GEL 280s. They were 280 gram aluminum rims.
Yeah.
They were super light. They also, the sidewalls wore through after about 3 seasons from just moderate braking. They were super light. You couldn't ride them if you were more than about 170 pounds because you'd fold them, right? But boy, with those, but you put those and you put silk tires on, the Silk Clement Criterium Setas on, and you had those tires were running about 180, 190 gram tires on those 280 rims. You had a really fast little setup coming out of those turns in the creek. You could spin those wheels up real fast,
Spins
right?
up.
So it wasn't a matter of like, well, I got to drill out parts on my bike, which was real popular in the late 70s, right? No, just put the light wheels on and you were flying. Right?
And that's the argument too. Is yours going to ride better than theirs? I don't care which bike you put. Give me some carbon wheels. I'll throw it on there, and we'll both be riding fast. I mean, that is the difference, man. It's knowing what makes the bike actually function better that is going to make the bike be better, right? So based on your purpose, right? So you have, in fat bike world, not everybody rides in snow. So why am I going to send you with a winter rail? You just need a set of Jumbo Jim 4.4s or 4.0s, and you're all set, man. You're going to have a trail bike that can do anything you ever want. And if you ever want to go take on some sand, yeah, sure, those can handle it. But it's knowing those small differences that actually make the bike better. So when it comes to can we compete in the high end? Yeah, we can, as long as we understand what and why they're using the bike. So I'll give you my favorite person in the world. I won't say his name. He came out riding with us once, and he had this beautiful full suspension bike, and it was him and his son both had. It was like $9,000 full suspension, gorgeous bikes. Like, I would love to just take off his hands and ride them back in the day. And I remember he's like, yeah, I got these beautiful bikes. I'm like, oh, cool, man, let's go ride. Brings him down, and he was the last guy in the group. Doesn't matter what you got. You could have gave him a gazillion-dollar bike, and he would have been the last guy. And the guy who was smoking us is T-Poke, who's on this beat-up, no offense, T-Poke, this beat-up Boris that he literally had now, it must be 6 years. And he's bent the frame so that he could put button loos on it. Like, he's done everything he can. The bike shouldn't be functioning, but it does. And he smokes us on the climb. His bike is heavy, it's slow, and it smokes us. It's never, in this purpose, it was never the bike. There is a difference between a Huffy and a higher end bike like what we carry. But when you get to our level, when you specifically design the bikes, you can make it work for everybody's needs.
Yeah, in the crossroad, we're even seeing some of that with Anthony Clark, and he's riding the squid bikes, and he said, he's killing it,
crushing them.
Right? He's not on a Trek, he's not on a Specialized, right? So you're definitely seeing that across the board with some of those smaller brands. And he was talking about the paint jobs in particular, because Squid does some crazy paint jobs.
They do.
And he was talking about it in Japan. He said in Japan it's gigantic. Like, that's what everybody rides. He's like, nobody has blacked out bike. My bike's blacked out. My road bike
That's incredibly popular, actually, here in the U.S. Everyone's blacked out.
My road bike's sweet, but it's blacked out. Yeah, but yeah, I would, but you're seeing those all the time, and that it looks fun.
Yeah, it all comes back down to, once again, although there are those high-level racers who go out and Strava their KOMs every 10 seconds, we get they exist, and they are a different animal, and they absolutely want, they will spend their life savings to race on something incredible. The rest of us, the other 99% of the industry, don't really require that. And when you really break it down, there are weekend warriors because they work normal jobs. I don't know how many racers you guys know that actually make a living racing, but I don't know any personally. Even our racers do it because they get bikes. You know what I mean? They race for us because they get bikes and they love racing. But beyond that, they're not making a living doing this sport. So let's get them on the right bike for what they're trying to accomplish. And that's always the mentality that I've approached on every single time. Like, you always don't want to be a racer? Yeah, let's get you set up for a racer. I'll give you an example. Sarah Kyler, which is our Canadian racer, she's like our endurance racer. We didn't give her carbon, anything. She runs like she did the Hardcore 24 this year. You guys know that. Mm-hmm. She came second place, 21 miles or 21 laps or something like that. That's like 100-something miles in one race. Now, sooner or later, carbon's going to start fatiguing. And when you have that, so instead, she runs carbon rims on an aluminum frame. Keep it simple. It doesn't matter at that point. Yes, would an extra 2 pounds overall maybe make her slightly faster? Yes, but she's going to be running through bikes every 10 minutes. So, and actually, we're switching over to head aluminum wheels over carbon wheels for her because she was riding down the road or riding down the trail and punctured her carbon rim right through the tire. So now there's a $2,000 set of rims that are useless. You can't do anything when you got to throw them away. So we're going to give her aluminum rims that are incredibly light, actually lighter than our carbon, which is even more crazy. So we just got to find the right need for the right customer. And that's, once again, going back to the bike shop model, if they can do that, they win. If they can't, I can buy it off the internet.
Yeah. Well, this has been great stuff. And we could probably talk to you for probably like 3 or 4 days without sleep.
Yes.
And but this was fantastic to be able to sit down here and really get your insights on where it's kind of been, where it's going, and some really good things as bike culture. I think we
you got any events coming up? Are you guys holding events?
There's a whole ton of them. Rob Baker's doing something at Baker's Acres, I believe it is, or Fatsilia, I believe is what the other place is. There's Ididafat and Snow Fat Shoe. Those are coming up. I know the guys in Genesee County, they have their yearly event coming up in 2 weeks. I'm sorry, actually next weekend. So we have
Genesee County Park.
Yep, at Genesee County Park.
Great place to ride.
If you guys ever go there, reach out to Jacob. He's awesome. Yep. It's super fun. It's once again going back to the culture. They are exactly what I love about Growler. We just go out there. Everyone brings some potluck kind of system. You have a ton of beer and drink whatever whiskey they got going on. Everyone goes out for rides.
That's next weekend, right?
It is.
The 12th, yeah.
Yes, it is right now. They're slightly might change that if we don't get any weather.
Because they were looking for some snow.
Yeah, some snow or even making sure the ground's hard enough to ride on. But, yeah, so those events are coming up. We plan on going back to Nibba Fest this year. We're working on maybe a Dirt Fest or a Philly Bike Show thing, something of that nature.
We're going to get you the Dirty Bike Gravel Series this spring?
Yes, we'll definitely be there with, hopefully by then, an American-made gravel frame design.
Very cool.
Which is already in the works, so that'll be kind of fun to have out there racing.
And there's quite a bit of fat bike racing that's popping up in New York State. If you go to NISBRA, they just put out a calendar of fat bike competitive events. A few of them are all right in Rochester and in Western New York, and some of them are down in Central New York. So you can check those out too.
Yeah, and pretty much what's interesting is every cycling event that I've seen recently has a fat bike category. So, and I always tell people, if you want to race, go out and do it. You don't have to win. Just go out and have fun with everybody else. I love going out with my friends racing the Hardcore 24. So go find one of these races, go out with your buddies. I'm never going to win one, I know that. I just like running around in circles on my bike. So
fat bikes at crits, maybe?
Why not?
Let's not get too crazy.
Come on. That's a good idea. Hey, I'll sponsor a whole entire thing just to have fat bikes at a crit. I'm in.
All right. Thanks for your time today, guys.
That was awesome. Thank you.